And I'm admitting everybody, so welcome. Welcome to those that are joining tonight's FERC comment party. We're really happy to be here with y'all. We're going to get the program started in just a little bit after folks are let in, and we are recording tonight's event. So if you don't want to be on camera, if we do switch to speak to gallery view, please stay off camera. Please remain muted during tonight's event. And I'll go over a little bit of housekeeping again in just a second. So the voice you're hearing as you look at this slide is Jessica Sims, the Virginia Field Coordinator with Appalachian Voices. And again, we along with Sierra Club, POWHR, Mountain Valley Watch, 7 Directions of Service, and Wild Virginia are very excited to be with y'all this evening. So we'll give it just another moment before we get started. And we are going to live stream this on Facebook, if I can get that to work. But we are recording tonight's event. So thank you all so much for joining. We are going to go ahead and get started, but sort of as to welcome everybody, we'd love to see where you're coming to us from tonight. So if you want to put your name and where you are, city and state, we'd love to connect with you that way. So welcome so much to tonight's FERC certificate renewal comment party. Again, I'm Jessica Sims with Appalachian Voices, and very excited to be with y'all this evening. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this and just explain a little bit of our housekeeping. Tonight's program is going to cover a good number of things, including what you would want to say to FERC about MVP's request for a 4-year extension to their certificate. We're going to give you sort of a MVP 101 just to make sure you're up to speed on all the issues related to the unnecessary destructive pipeline. We are also going to give you information on how to physically submit a comment and navigate the FERC website, what you should put in your comment, and what happens if you are someone who should be an intervenor in the proceedings. After we've gone through those processes and that information, we will stop the live stream and stop the recording and switch to a Q&A for the remainder of our time together. But for the entirety of tonight's event, we encourage you to put questions as they come to mind into the chat, and we're going to answer them as folks have those. We'll answer them as best we can, and then we will hit the remainder of questions or unanswered questions during the Q&A section. So all questions go into the chat. We're going to ask that everybody please stay muted during tonight's event, and so we can cut down on background noise and hear our speakers as they present. So just checking on one thing, because we're really excited to have a welcome as part of tonight's event. And so I just want to check to see if we have folks from 7 Directions of Service here with us this evening who are going to kick off tonight's proceedings. So I'll hand that over to you if you'd like to come off mute and welcome us to tonight's event. Thank you so much.
Halito, everybody. Chima Chukma. I hope you all are well. So I was asked to do a grounding and just kind of, get us all on the same page. And I'll tell you that most of the groundings that I deliver are unorthodox. They're based on the 4 gifts and my spirituality that we believe that we're given as human beings. And those 4 first gifts are breath, a good mind, a heartbeat, and a voice. And so, I could easily start out with a breathing exercise, but I've been breathing ever since we got this news, and it hasn't really helped the little wind that's been knocked out of my guts. I could easily take you into the mental exercise with a meditation, but I've been doing plenty of that, and my mind is still focused on what's at hand and what blow has been delivered. I could have you hold your heart and feel that heartbeat, that emotional gift that we're given, and that would remind you that you are still alive. But I could tell you, my heart has been pacing very fast. And so with the short time that I've been given, I'm just going to ask you to go straight to the fourth and exercise the voice. And the voice is our spiritual gift that we're given. Starts with our first cry, and a first cry when we're born, right? And then from that cry, we can develop it into speaking and advocating for ourselves. Some of us are taught to pray in a vocal way, and some of us are taught to sing our prayer. But however, that voice is the most powerful thing that I can give. So I'm going to ask you, you don't have to come off, but I'm just going to trust that you're going to say this as feel comfortable in your homes and spaces. And it's going to be a repeat after me. And this is all the grounding is going to be. It's going to simply be one, I love you all. Repeat after me. The second one is going to be, I love life. The third one is going to be, I love all our living relatives. So the last one is going to be a little more difficult. It's going to be a whole sentence. And because of this love that I carry, I will protect all of these things. I hope you feel grounded. I hope you feel together. When I say this gesture of love, it's really that simple, why we do this work. And it's really that uncomplicated. It doesn't take a whole it doesn't take a lot of debate, dispute. Because we love each other, we love ourselves, we love the living things that we've been gifted since the beginning of time. This is a necessary endeavor. And so I just want to leave you with my gratitude for the time that you're taking. Thank your families that are missing you for this time. And let's get some work done, y'all, because it's very serious. I'm complete. Thank you.
Jason, thank you so much for grounding this and bringing us all together tonight. And so folks know, Jason is the co-director and co-creator of 7 Directions of Service. So we'll get some information in the chat so you can connect with them. So as we go into the next part of tonight's presentation, I want to ask that everyone remain on mute so we can hear our speakers and not have any background noise. So please remain on mute. Any questions you have can go into the chat. I'm excited to turn us over, and I'm going to share my screen again just to give a little sense of what's coming next. So Jason's helped us with our welcome. We're now going to go into our MVP 101, and that's going to teach us more about this. And I'm very excited to hand this over to David Sly, who is the Conservation Director for Wild Virginia. So David, if you could take it away, I'm going to leave this image up for just a second and then take it down as you share some information with us so we can all be on the same page.
Thanks, Jess. Welcome, everybody. They've given me a big task, which is to explain what MVP is about and where we are. And as slow as I talk, I can't possibly do that all in 5 minutes, but I'm going to do the best I can. The important thing to me is that we are still here fighting this pipeline, and we still have a chance to stop it. And whether you're brand new to this, and I see some names that I don't know, or whether you've been in this fight for 7 or 8 years, which I know some of us have, we have a lot to save. That's why it's so important to be here and to let your voice be heard. We've got hundreds of streams and wetlands that are yet to be destroyed or damaged in the way that MVP would destroy them. We have parts of the national forest that we can still save, and we can lessen at least some of the damage and some of the pain that's occurred to people along the way in communities. So we're here with MVP asking for 4 additional years to build this pipeline, to get it in service, when they originally were supposed to be done in October of 2020. They are at this place because of our voices throughout various regulatory processes and in court cases. And again, remember that if we speak out, if we put information into the record in processes like this, that gives us the ammunition later if we need to challenge things in court. So if you're brand new, again, you see the map there, kind of a broad outline. This is a 300-mile proposed pipeline, 42-inch pipe that would run from the fracking fields all the way to Pittsylvania County in Virginia. It goes through some of the toughest terrain for this kind of project that you can imagine, especially in the East. It crosses some of the most valuable and sensitive landscapes and environments. So, you know, that's what we're facing. Now, there has been a lot of construction done already. MVP will tell you that they're almost done, but that's not true. They want folks to believe that this is a done deal, that there's no point in continuing the battle, but that's just not the fact. Again, there are more than 400 water crossings that have yet to be done, and we need to stop those. We need to prevent those from happening. Again, we're here because we have shown over and over that the studies that were done by the company, by the regulatory agencies weren't adequate, that the predictions that they could build this without grave damages were untrue, which we have shown from the very beginning. And so they've lost over and over. They currently are without 4 separate federal authorizations that they have to go forward, and that's not even counting this proposal for an extension from FERC. They need a new approval from the Fish and Wildlife Service under the Endangered Species Act, because that has been inadequate twice in a row. They need permission from the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management to cross the Jefferson National Forest, because again, they failed twice, and we're insisting that they do that right again. That in particular, there's going to be yet another public comment period and another chance for you to weigh in. Don't worry about that right now, because we're going to keep you up to date on that and give you instructions and ways to plug in later. But that's also a place where we can really make a difference. And then there's a permit from the Corps of Engineers under the Clean Water Act that again has been rejected a couple times, and that's in process. Now they can't go forward with that until they get the Endangered Species Act approval finished. So, and then finally, there are court cases now underway against both the states of Virginia and West Virginia over their inadequate Clean Water Act permits. So that's a very sketchy and very quick attempt to outline what's going on here and where we are. But I'll just state again, we've got a lot to gain by stopping this now. Do not think that there's no reason for you to jump in if you haven't been here. Do not think there's any reason to relent if you have been here all along. We can still win this. Thanks.
Dave, thank you so much for sharing that information about MVP's history and where MVP stands right now. We certainly know there are lots of roadblocks to the project and that it will be defeated, and that will be with all of y'all's help. So we're really excited to show you some ways that you can take action. And I want to go ahead and turn this over to Grace for just a moment. Grace is the Development and Programs Coordinator for the POWHR Coalition. And she's going to share a little information about some quick actions that you can do right now while we're in the event. Grace, thanks so much.
You bet. Thanks, Jess. So I'm going to put a document into the chat. And what I invite us all to do right now is to open up that document and pick either a petition, Appalachian Voices has a petition asking FERC to deny this extension. Sierra Club has a quick comment that you can send, or you can scroll down in this social media toolkit and find one of the posts, and you can tweet it or use a graphic, put it on Instagram or Facebook. So I invite everyone to take just a couple minutes to dig into this toolkit. There's lots of information there, lots of how-tos and some quick actions. So again, there's a quick comment with Sierra Club, quick petition with App Voices, and a social media post guide. So thanks. And there's also Wild Virginia's guide.
Grace, thank you so much. Lots of wonderful resources. So we've got petitions and sign-on letters that you can sign while we're in tonight's program, and you can share with your friends to help amplify those. And then we also have ways coming up that are a little more detailed, where you can actually submit a direct comment or your own personalized comment to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, otherwise known as FERC. So to talk to you about what should be in those comments and how to write them effectively, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie Goodrum, who is the Conservation Policy Associate for Wild Virginia.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us tonight to learn about this. So I wanted to share some suggestions and best practices for writing your comment if you're going to write a longer comment, especially a personalized directed comment. That way your comment can be the best it can possibly be. So it's important to remember that the person responsible for reviewing your comment may have hundreds or even thousands of comments to read. So it's really important if you're going to get your point across, in order to frame your comment in a clear, concise, and convincing manner to get your point across. Ultimately, you want your comment to be effective. And what we mean by effective is it's a comment that clearly and convincingly communicates your opinion about the agency's action, so as to provide useful, relevant information for the agency to consider in its decision. And effective comments are the comments that have impact. And impact means that the comment provides information and insight that the agency lacks, that have the potential to influence the agency's decision making. So just next slide. So effective comments are relevant. They're written in an organized format. The writing is clear, and it connects your experience to the question the agency is asking. It provides information and evidence, and it offers insights that they might not have. Maybe it's a perspective that you, given your story, you have that the agency decision maker doesn't. And it also refrains from insults, because you want that person to continue to read your comment and not get turned off right away because you're calling them mean names. So connecting your experience to the question the agency is asking is key, because this is where you have the best potential of influencing the decision. So what do we mean by experience? Experience can be your knowledge of the situation or subject matter and the impact to you. So when we're talking about the impact of the project on you or to you, it's what is the impact of the agency's decision on you, your household, your land, your livelihood, your recreation, and or your community. Any of that can count as an impact and gives you a reason for commenting and something to say that's really important in telling your story and just giving the agency information that perhaps they don't have. So to help you start brainstorming about how you're going to use this opportunity to comment to tell your story, we have some examples. Jess, can you go to the next slide? Cool. So if you are maybe a landowner or a community member or a recreationalist, you can talk about the number of years of experience you have with the impacted land and water. You could talk about specific impacts that you have seen firsthand that have resulted from this project or the action that the agency is already undertaking or is considering. You can also talk about specific impacts that could result from this proposed project. So the agency is considering, FERC is considering an extension in this case. So what additional impacts could we see from this destruction? And then also why this land and water is special to you and deserves to be protected. Can you go to the next slide? Jeff, thanks. So I also wanted to say more examples if you're a scientist, whether that's a professional scientist or a citizen scientist or some kind of subject matter expert. You can talk about your professional credentials, your area of expertise. You can talk about your number of years of experience in the field or any professional connections to the land or water or to the community. Maybe this is an area that you've been studying for years or an area where you've been working with for years. You can also give your opinion on the agency analysis. That's really valuable to have experts speak up, whether a citizen expert based on your many decades of being involved with this land or a professional scientist. And also why this land water is special and deserves to be protected. Next slide, Jess. Thank you. So we put together just a quick one-page guide that will be sent out after the comment party with just the tips for reminding how to make your comment effective. Next slide, Jess. Thank you. And now Grace is going to talk about what exactly you should put in the comments for this particular commenting opportunity.
All right. Thanks so much. That was awesome, Jackie. Okay, so I am going to back us up just a step and go over the context one more time. And then the realm of talking points can be a vast and confusing ocean. So we're going to be super clear and concise in this presentation. And then we're going to send you home with a document of all the talking points in all the categories that you could think of. And you can run with whatever fits you. You don't have to include all of them. You can pick one that speaks to you. You can do it however you like, as few or as many as works for you. And like Jackie talked about, including your personal experience is incredibly important. So for the context here, so Mountain Valley Pipeline, their current certificate extension expires October 13th. Without an extension, no further construction can be conducted. So they've asked the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to extend that certificate till October 13th, 2026. And this is the second time they've asked for this. So FERC is taking public comments on this second extension request. And we will give you the link to the FERC notice so you can read it. But basically, there are 3 ways for you to engage in this proceeding. And the deadline is currently July 14th. So it's a quick turnaround. So I would recommend, if you're short on time or super new to the issue or just overwhelmed by all this info, that you do one or all of those quick actions that were in the social toolkit, and we'll send them to you again. The petition, Sierra Club's action alert, any of those things, posting on social media, quick actions. Then you could also consider typing your own comment into FERC using e-comment, which is a feature that we're going to explain. Or you could submit a longer letter type comment using FERC's e-file feature. Or you can decide that a more involved process called intervening that has some specific criteria might be right for you. So we'll talk about that. But that's the context that I'm speaking to you from, is when you're writing your own comments. So you want to go past those sort of one-click options. That's what we're going to get into. So what the heck do you say? Essentially, you are trying to answer 2 big questions for FERC on the context that I just gave you. So number 1 is, why is this project delayed? Why hasn't the pipeline been built yet? Why is MVP having to request the second extension? Can MVP be blamed for this? And if so, how? And ultimately, does MVP show good cause for this extension to be granted? Of course, we think the answer is no across the board, and that MVP is to blame for the delay, for their inadequate permits, for all their violations, and we're going to get into that. But that is really the angle that you're trying to write to FERC with. And number 2 is, can FERC safely rely on the analysis they did when they first approved MVP's certificate of public convenience and necessity? If not, why? What has changed? What's the info on the ground that shows that things have changed? So that's what your personal experience is so key to. And just a note, FERC is not going to consider arguments about the issuing of the original certificate, the original determination of public convenience and necessity, or if their original analysis complied with NEPA, but that doesn't mean necessarily that you can't include that in your comment. Okay, next slide, please. So key points, we're going to address the first question first. Number 1 thing, make sure you actually urge FERC to deny the certificate extension request. It's so easy to forget when you get writing a comment and you get fired up, you bring in your personal experience. Don't forget to actually urge them to deny it. So first question, what could you say in response to why this project is delayed, and is it MVP's fault? So MVP is to blame for the project delays due to their inadequate permits, which have repeatedly been challenged and repeatedly been pulled and voided, like Dave said. Evidence of hundreds of previous violations, repeated loss of those federal authorizations show that MVP is not likely to construct this pipeline in compliance with all environmental and water quality laws. And at the time of this request for extension of time, they are lacking all of those federal authorizations as of today. Next slide, please. So second question that you're trying to answer is, can FERC safely rely on that analysis they did when they first approved MVP certificate? If not, why not? What has changed? So FERC cannot rely on that old information because so much has changed. And at a minimum, FERC must do a supplemental environmental analysis under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. And although the company is publicly stating that the project is substantially complete, sometimes we're seeing over 95% claims, the company is requesting more time than FERC thought MVP would need to complete the entire pipeline initially. That was 3 years. Their initial certificate was for 3 years. There is no need for the gas that MVP is proposing to transport. And then again, a plea to call on your own experience and your evidence from the ground that shows how FERC inadequately predicted the risks of the MVP versus the reality. So I know that was a lot of info. We're going to give you a document. Thanks so much for bearing with me.
Grace, thanks so much. And sorry for my technical glitch there as I had dual screens going. So pardon on that. So I'm excited. We know what's going to go in the comment. We know what it's important to cover. And so you may have already taken action with one of the quick click sign on petitions, but you want to take that next step and submit a comment directly into the FERC docket. So I'm going to turn it over to the North Carolina Field Coordinator for Appalachian Voices, Ridge Graham, who's going to talk to us about how to both e-comment and e-file on the FERC docket. And this is going to be a tutorial to help you with that step-by-step process. And I will share my screen during that too. So Ridge, over to you.
Thanks, Jess, and thanks everybody for joining this evening, and I appreciate Grace for that helpful recap of everything that's happening. So just to kind of go over, this is probably, we're going to try and go through this kind of quickly. This might be more helpful if you go back through the recording and see this, but I just wanted to flag for folks that FERC's website is pretty inherently convoluted. And it's difficult to submit one of these comments that are more impactful than signing onto a petition or doing one of these quick actions or doing something on social media. Putting it in front of FERC through their own website is what's going to be super helpful. And so we're going to go through, as Grace said, through these things in order of ease. And so starting off with e-comment. So if you go to the ferc.gov website, next slide, you're going to be hit this page, and if you go on, look on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see FERC Online, and if you click it, next slide, on the right-hand side, you'll see e-comment, and Russell's also put a link in the chat for these for e-comment that you can get there quickly. But if you hit next slide, if you're on mobile, it's going to look a little bit different. There's a little menu up at the top right. If you select that, next slide. It'll look similar to that. There's a little FERC Online thing. You click that and you scroll all the way down, next slide, and there's the e-comment section. So hit next slide. So what that's going to take you to, whether you're on mobile or on the computer, is this page that looks like this. It's the FERC Online portal. And for e-comment, you fill out all of this information in the fields presented, and only your name is going to be publicly available on the website for other folks to see, but you do need to provide all the things that it's asking for here. And you fill in the caption authorize, and next slide. And so what you'll do on the next slide, what you'll do after you fill in that information is you're going to search for CP16-10, which is the docket for the Mountain Valley Pipeline. It's their main docket, and it's where this extension is taking place. You're going to hit that blue plus. Once you search for it, it'll pop up in that table, and it's going to add it into that selected dockets window. Your name will appear below, and there'll be a comment box for you to type your comment into. You have 6,000 characters, and once you're done, hit send comment. All right, next slide. So this is that's e-commenting, and if you have any questions, we're sending these slides out, and there's also going to be hopefully contact information that we can send to folks. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to any of us at any point, and we'll help you with this. E-filing is something that's a little bit more complicated, but your comment is going directly into the docket. It'll be publicly available for other people to see, and it will really show kind of like the direct amount of folks who are in opposition to this extension. So there's more steps to this, but it has a better impact. So the first thing you want to do is actually type up your comment and save it, either as a PDF or a Word document or a text file or anything else. So going back to that FERC.gov page, you're going to go to e-file, which is on the right-hand side under this quick link things. And it's going to, I think I've maybe got the next slide. I think I'm showing you what's on mobile. Yeah, on mobile, it's just right down there at the bottom is e-file. Next slide. So for an e-filing process, you have to register. And so if you don't already have a FERC account, you're going to want to hit new user. When you e-file, it will take you to this screen. And so you're going to want to log in for it. And so next slide. So it looks similar to the e-comment thing. And if you are wanting to do an e-comment, you can also do this registration part, and it'll fill in your information for you when you go to do an e-comment. But it looks similar. Complete the form, hit next, not done. Next slide. You want to fill out your address information on the next slide, hit next, and next slide. And then if you are just representing yourself, you're going to hit done. Otherwise, put in whatever company or organization that you're filing on behalf of. You'll get an email confirmation once you hit done, and check that email, click the link in it, and then you'll be ready to go. Next slide. So once you are done registering, when you e-file, you'll come to this page, and it will say a filing type. You'll select general in the first column. Next slide. You'll select comment on the filing or environmental report or technical conference, and then in the next column, and the next slide. And then there's only comment in the filing type. You'll hit next after that, next slide. And similar to the e-comment, you'll type in CP16-10. There's only one hyphen in it. I typed that in wrong, apologies. But hit search, and it'll pull up a table. Next slide. Same thing, you hit that blue plus as the first item. It'll appear in the selected docket windows, and you'll hit next, next slide. And from there, you can attach your file. You'll hit browse to select it and find wherever you've saved it on your computer. Then in the next field, you'll give it a description. Usually it's just comment of your name and then the docket number, which is CP16-10. You'll hit upload, and then you'll just make sure that it's there under the public section, and you'll hit next, and you'll confirm your slide on the next screen. Next. And so that's how to e-file and how to e-comment. Again, we'll be sending this information out. So as e-comment is something that's quicker, but e-filing has more impact, although it has more steps. And the next way that you can get involved is intervening. And it's a much more complicated and involved process, but it has the most impact if it's something that is relevant to you. And I'm going to hand it over to Russell at this point to explain how to go into that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ridge. Yes, so we get a lot of questions about intervening on FERC dockets. There's a couple of really good quotes here on your screen from partner organizations, Delaware Riverkeeper and Wild Virginia, that kind of explain why you want to intervene or why you would intervene. And it is a slightly more complicated process. The important note from Wild Virginia there, as an intervenor, it carries additional responsibilities. There is some follow-up that you will need to do when you submit comments to open dockets. So basically, anyone can register or request to be registered to intervene on FERC dockets, but the commission will decide who to award that intervenor status to. Can we go to the next slide? And it has been a source of controversy and some discussion even among the commissioners themselves. On another matter before the commission last year, a couple of years back, Commissioner Danley basically was urging everyone in the fossil fuel industry, everyone, pipeline builders, oil and gas companies, to intervene on every single docket. And he essentially opened up the door for the pretty interesting response from Chair Glick. In his words, he would say that the same status should basically be granted to not just the fossil fuel interests, but anybody that has been given rough treatment, we'll say, by the commission. So let's go to the next slide. Using that for motivation to determine whether or not you should in fact intervene, particularly if you're a landowner or a resident very nearby the MVP right-of-way, or you have commented on proceedings before, you have already gotten pretty close to establishing intervenor status and can ask for that. And you will use e-filing for this because you cannot actually use e-comment for this. So it is the same sorts of steps. You go to the e-filing, select general, go to the next slide. In the middle section, you will see an option for intervention. And the next slide. And then motion to intervene on the right, I'm sorry. And then the rest of the process is very similar to what Ridge has described. So you want to make sure that you select the docket that you are intervening on. In this case, ignore the graphic there, and we would be using CP16-10, hit the little plus sign, go to the next slide. And here's where you would upload your motion to intervene as a separate document if that's the method that you are using through e-file. Go to the next slide, please. You can also do a slightly quicker version of this, which is known as a docless or documentless motion to intervene. It's the same steps in selecting general and intervention, but then on the right hand menu, you want to select that docless motion to intervene. Go to the next slide. And it will open up a text box where you can then explain out your reasons for intervening. We are going to share a very rudimentary template that you can use for uploading that document, but you could also use that as a framework for writing your motion to intervene and then entering it into this text box if you decide to use the docless intervention. Next slide. So again, as an intervenor, then you will be subscribed. If FERC grants you intervenor status, you'll be added to the service list. You'll be subscribed to the docket, and everyone that is on that intervenor service list then has to send you the filings that they are submitting onto the FERC docket. You will have to follow that step too. That is the one that I think folks have the most trouble with. But basically, you will query the service list from that left-hand menu, select the docket as you have seen in the other steps, and you can download that as a text file, which will include all of the emails for everybody that is on that intervenor list. Then you simply have to notify them that you have submitted a comment and attach that comment or submit the link to where your comment is kept in eLibrary. Next slide, please. This is just an example of the notice of service with a copy of acceptance for filing that I sent around for a comment that I submitted on behalf of the POWHR Coalition. So again, you're basically just letting that service list know that you have submitted a written comment to that docket, what the comment is addressing and where it can be found in the e-library system. You don't necessarily have to do this. You can simply send them a copy of what you have filed to that entire list. Recommend that you BCC that list so that you're not blasting that entire email list out there to everyone, and then have fulfilled your obligations as an intervenor. Next slide. Because it is a little bit complicated, can be a little bit confusing, and folks do forget to do it, I am standing by. My email is there. I'm happy to help assist people go through that process. And if you choose to take that step, basically what you are asking for from the commission is standing on the proceeding and standing in the event that there's any challenges to the decision by FERC. So happy to answer questions after we finish the rest of the comment party.
Russell, thank you so much for sharing that information. And for folks who've not yet met Russell, he's the co-chair of the POWHR Coalition, and he is also the coordinator for Mountain Valley Watch, which is the citizen monitoring group that has provided so much information for the hundreds of water quality violations that MVP has accumulated over the years of pre-construction and construction. So we've reached the part of our program that's going to switch to Q&A. And to make this space a little more intimate, we're actually going to stop the live stream and stop recording. So bear with me just for a moment while I do that. And I'm turning that recording off.